So very good afternoon and welcome to today's session. Can you see the slide, students? Can anyone reply?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today's class, we will be discussing regarding the two-factor theory. So before going to that, we will do a quick recap of the things what we have covered yesterday. So majorly we covered about the hierarchy of needs theory yesterday, which speaks about the psychological needs and the safety needs, belongingness needs, and esteem needs and self-actualization needs. Then we even understood regarding how organization should motivate with the hierarchy of needs theory. We understood regarding the this pyramid structure basically, which speaks about the psychological needs. So what I'm discussing here is in when it comes to organization, how organization should motivate with the hierarchy of needs theory. So bottom you can see in the pyramid over there, which is basic needs, that is psychological needs. So organizations should meet these needs through adequate salary, breaks, and working conditions, which we discussed in the yesterday's class. Okay, and then the second top of psychological needs, we have the safety needs over there, and after that we have social needs, then esteem needs, and finally in the pyramid we have the self-actualization needs, which speaks about organizations should meet these needs by the development of employee skills, then the chance to be creative, achievement, and even promotions, and the ability to have complete control of their jobs. So till here we had discussed in the yesterday's session. So today we will be discussing about a very important concept. It's called as a two-factor theory. So students, am I audible? Can you see the slide so that I can start?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when we speak about the two-factor theory, first we'll understand what is this two-factor theory here. In 1960s, Frederick Herzberg published his two-factor theory. So Herzberg combined, what he did was he combined the lower level needs into one classification, and he called it hygiene or maintenance, and the higher level needs into another classification, which he called motivators. So students, today we will try to understand what exactly is this two-factor theory. So Herzberg, he combined the lower level needs into the one classification, which he called it as hygiene or even maintenance, which the higher levels needs into another classification, which he called it as motivators. See, basically this two-factor theory proposes that people are motivated by motivators rather than maintenance factors. So we'll try to understand what are these maintenance and motivators. Please see the slide over there. See, we are discussing now the two-factor theory. It's also called as Herzberg two-factor theory, which was published in the year 1960. Now the first one, that is maintenance, which are called as extrinsic factors. See, extrinsic factors are also called maintenance factors, because please understand students, motivation comes from outside the person and the job itself. So extrinsic motivation includes job security, title, then even working condition, fringe benefit, and even the relationship. So these factors are related to meeting lower level needs. And then we have the motivators, which are called as intrinsic factors. That means within. See, motivators are called intrinsic factors because motivation will come from within the person through the work itself. So intrinsic motivators include achievement, then recognition, challenge, and advancement. Okay, so these factors are related to meeting higher level needs. Then very important, students, see, doing something we want to do and doing it well can be its own reward. So organizations realize the importance of intrinsic motivation and even are making jobs more interesting and even challenging, while balancing intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. That is very important. Okay. Now, what this Herzberg two-factor motivation model speaks about? Herzberg and Associates, based on the research, they actually, students, they disagreed with the traditional view that satisfaction and dissatisfaction were at opposite ends of one continuum. So what they told was there are two continuums: not satisfied with the environment, that is we call it as maintenance, to dissatisfied, and satisfied with the job itself, that those are motivators, to not satisfied, that is a two-dimensional model, okay, for Herzberg motivation model. So employees are on a continuum from dissatisfied to not dissatisfied with their environment. Now, Herzberg, he believes that if employees are dissatisfied with their pay and they get a rise, so they will no longer be dissatisfied. However, before long, people get accustomed to the new standard of living and will become dissatisfied again. So employees will need another rise to not be dissatisfied again. Please see the diagram here, students: maintenance factors and motivation factors. So it is called as a two-factor theory. So maintenance factors, when we speak about, see the grid over there in x-axis and y-axis. See, we have maintenance factors which are called as the extrinsic motivators, which are like psychological, safety and the social needs, existence and relatedness needs, pay benefits, job security, then working conditions, company policies and human relations. So these, they come under maintenance factors, which are extrinsic motivators. And then we even discussed about the motivator factors, which are, with the job motivator factors, which are intrinsic factors. So which are, esteem and self-actualization needs, then growth needs, work itself, and recognition and achievement. See, when we speak about recognition, if someone doesn't recognize your job, and then also what happens is you will be demotivated. Always someone should actually motivate. How can they motivate you? By identifying your job or the task what you have performed, and the suitable reward has to be given for that. Otherwise, what happens? That is one of the motivational factors for any employees, right? So when we speak about the intrinsic factors, recognition, achievement, then increased responsibility, then growth and advancement. Okay. Then we'll try to understand what is this money as a motivator. So will money motivate employees? Obviously, right? So monetary benefit is required for each and every individual. That is why they are working in the organization. So when someone is performing extremely good, that is one of the motivational factor. But it is not only the motivational factor, but it is one among other factors. See, the current view of money as a motivator is that money matters more to some people, correct? Because they might be having a lot of commitment here. So money actually matters for few people, and that it motivates some employees. However, money does not necessarily motivate all the employees to work harder. So money also is limited in its ability to motivate. But money is important, very, very important. Okay. So as you know, students, Jack Welch says, you can't just reward employees with the trophies. You need to reward them in the wallet too. See, every time you are doing a good job and every time the company is giving you the certificates or the trophies, so that will motivate you once or twice, but always it will not motivate you. So you need to reward them in the wallet too. So employees often leave one organization for another to make more money, right? Because they'll be getting higher packages. So obviously they'll be shifting from one organization to another organization. So high compensation, that is pay and benefits based on the performance, is a practice of successful organizations. So students, please understand, if we get a better rise or if you get a pay rise, would you be motivated and more productive? Obviously, majority of the people will say yes. So what is this motivating employees with the two-factor theory? What we understood in the old management paradigm, money was considered the best motivator. But under the new leadership paradigm, pay is important, but it is not the best motivator. So intrinsic motivators are. So Herzberg's theory has been criticized for having limited research support, but however, it continues to be tested. So once employees are not, dissatisfied with their pay and other maintenance factors, they can be motivated through their jobs. So what are job enrichment? Job enrichment, the process of building motivators into job itself by making it more interesting and challenging. So job enrichment has been used successfully to motivate the employees to higher level of performance at many of the organizations at the multinational companies, which includes GM, IBM, Motorola, and other companies. See, there was a company, Market America, which allowed people to operate their own business. So related to two-factor theory, the focus is on motivators so that distributors can grow and meet their high-level needs of esteem and even the self-actualization. Okay, so what we discussed today in the two-factor theory, we majorly understood about the maintenance factors, which we called it as the extrinsic motivators, and the motivator factors, which we call it as the intrinsic motivators. Okay, so that was in the year 1960. That was the research outcome of Frederick Herzberg. Okay, which he published this particular research work in the year 1960. Then, after understanding the two-factor theory, we'll try to understand the acquired needs theory. See, acquired needs theory proposes that people are motivated by their need for achievement, power, and affiliation. I'm repeating once again. Acquired needs theory proposes that people are motivated by their need for achievement, power, and affiliation. So, students, please understand, it is now called acquired needs theory because David McClelland was not the first to study these needs. A general need theory was developed by Henry Murray, then adopted by John and David McClelland. So acquired needs theory says that all the people have the need for achievement, power, and even affiliation. But the degree keeps on varying. Okay? So I'm repeating now, students. This acquired need theory proposes that people are motivated by their need for achievement, power, and even the affiliation. So what this acquired need theory says, it says that all the people have the need for achievement, power, and affiliation, but varying degrees. Now, first we'll try to understand how you can motivate the employees with a high NAC. The moment I say NAC, it is achievement. So how you can do that? See, we have to give the employees the non-routine, challenging task with the clear, attainable objectives. And then we can give the employees the fast and frequent feedback on their performance. So continually give them increased responsibility for doing new things, keep out of their way. That is something what we call it as achievement. See, what happens in the organization is, so when you feel that you have achieved something, when you get a feedback from someone, right? Yes, you are going the right direction. Yes, you have achieved something. Otherwise, you yourself cannot feel that I have achieved something, right? When your parents say that, yes, I'm proud of you. Or your teacher say that, yes, you have done an extremely good job. So what you have to do is, you have to give the employees a non-routine challenging task with clear attainable objectives. And very important is, you as a leader should give the fast and the frequent feedback on their performance. So continuously or continually, we have to give them increased responsibility for doing new things, innovative things, creative things. So keep out of their way. That is how you can motivate employees with a high NAC. Then motivating employees with a high NPOW. The second one. Please see the slide over there. NPOW means what? With a lot of power. See, let them let them plan and control their jobs as much as possible. Try to include them in decision making. So you should make them realize their true potential in taking the decision, especially when they are affected by the decision. So they tend to perform best alone rather than as a team members. And again, try to assign them to a whole task rather than just a part of a task. So that is how you can motivate your employees with a high NPOW. And the last one, how we can motivate the employees with a high NF. What we have to do is be sure to let them work as a part of a team. See, that is very important, students. When you are working in a team, it is not the individual performance which matters. It is a team performance which actually matters. So it's like a teamwork, what you are showing there, okay? So when we speak about motivating employees with high NF, they derive satisfaction from the people they work with rather than the task itself. And we have to, as a team leader, we have to give them lots of praise and recognition and delegate responsibility for orienting and training new employees to them. They make great mentors. So that is how we can use all these three methods. That is high NAC, then high NPOW, and finally high NF. See, when we speak about Market America, how does it motivates all its distributors? See, Market America does help distributors meet all the three acquired needs. It provides support so that they can achieve their goal of successfully running their own business, because they make them realize their power. So they have the power to be in control, and even they can develop an affiliation with the customers and other distributors and owners too. So that is what we discuss about ANAC, that is achievement, NPOW, that is power, and NF, that is affiliation. And the next important thing is we have to comparison of content motivation theories. You can see over there, when we speak about hierarchy need theory, that is Maslow's hierarchy need theory, we spoke about needs must be met in a hierarchical order. Right? Needs must be met in a hierarchical order, which starts from psychological and ends with self-actualization. Please see the cursor over there. Start from psychological and ends with self-actualization. That was hierarchies needs theory. Then we discussed about the two-factor theory. See, maintenance factor will not motivate employees. Correct? See, in two-factor theory, what we discussed, that is the extrinsic motivators as well as intrinsic motivators. So when we spoke about extrinsic motivators, we spoke about the psychological, safety, and social needs. So which includes the benefits, job security, working condition, company policies, etc. Whereas the intrinsic motivator or the motivator factor, wherein it is esteem and self, you can see there motivators, esteem, self-actualization needs. See here, these three, that is psychological, it is maintenance factor, safety is again a maintenance factor, and belongingness is a maintenance factor, whereas esteem is a motivator factor and self-actualization is a motivator factor. Correct? And in case of acquired need theory, McClellan, so we majorly thought about achievement and power, and affiliation. So employees must be motivated differently based on their acquired needs. So that was one of the comparison of the three theories, which was hierarchy of needs theory, that is Maslow's hierarchy theory. Then we have Herzberg two-factor theory and acquired needs theory. Then we will go to process motivation theory. Students, for understanding it is very, you think that it is very simple. But in the examination, if any question will be asked, you will be totally confused, because here we'll be studying a lot of theories in this particular unit, that is unit 3. As I mentioned to you, it is one of the lengthiest unit in this particular subject. Okay. So as and when we actually discuss, so the slides are already shared with you all. Kindly prepare your notes. That is very important. Then only you can understand the concepts, whatever we are discussing today. See, this process motivation theory, as the name only suggests, it focuses on understanding how people choose behavior to fulfill their needs. So process motivation theories are more complex than content motivation theories. Content motivation theories simply focus on identifying and understanding the people needs, whereas process motivation theories go a step further. What it does, it attempts to understand why people have different needs, why their needs change, and how and why people choose to try to satisfy needs in different ways. And we will try to understand, even as the name only says, students will try to understand the process. We'll ask a lot of questions. How and why people choose to try to satisfy needs in different ways. And then the mental process people go through as they understand the situations and how they evaluate their need satisfaction. So majorly in this process motivation theory, we'll try to understand the mentality of the people, that is why people have different needs or why their needs change, and how and why people choose to try to satisfy needs in different ways. The mental processes people go through as they understand situations and how they evaluate their need satisfaction, which is again a complex theory compared to the earlier theory what we discussed. Now in process motivation theory, we understand the first one, which is called as, we learn about the 3 process motivation theories. Process motivation theories, which is a equity theory, expectancy, and the goal setting theory. So again, we'll be studying here the 3 types of theories under process motivation theory. The first one is called as equity theory, and the second one is called as expectancy theory, and the third one is called goal setting theory. Now in this class, we'll try to understand equity theory. So what is this equity theory? Please understand, if employees perceive organizational decisions and managerial actions to be unfair or unjust, so they're likely to experience feelings of anger, outrage, and resentment. So equity theory is primarily, J. Stacey Adams motivation theory, in which people are said to be motivated to seek social equity in the rewards they receive output for their performance. So what is this equity theory? Equity theory proposes that people are motivated when their perceived inputs equal outputs. I'm repeating once again. Equity theory proposes that people are motivated when their perceived inputs inputs equal outputs. We'll try to understand in detail about this equity theory now. Through the equity theory, students, or through this equity theory process, people compare their inputs. What are inputs? So inputs are nothing but their effort, their experience, their sincerity, their intelligence, their commitment, their dedication, their hard work. Correct? So these are called as inputs. So people compare their inputs with what? With outputs. So what are outputs basically? Prize or recognition, benefits, pay ranges, promotions, increased status in the organizations to that of relevant others. See, equitable distribution of pay is crucial to organizations. Unfortunately, what is happening, students, many employees tend to inflate their own efforts or performance when comparing themselves to others. So employees also tend to overestimate what others earn. So employees may be very satisfied and motivated until they find out that a relevant other is earning more for the same job or earning the same for doing less work. So this is very common, thing. A classic example is if a student is getting higher marks compared to his friend, he starts comparing, right? In the classes also, the same thing happens. Sir, even I have written the same thing, whatever he or she has written, but you have given less marks to me. Correct? So a comparison with the relevant others leads to three conclusions. So please see here, a comparison with relevant others leads to one of the three conclusions. The employee is under rewarded, or over rewarded, or equitably rewarded. When inequity is perceived, employees attempt to reduce it by reducing input or increasing the output. So what happens, students, if you feel that you are doing more work, your input is more compared to your friend's input, but output what you are getting is less compared to your friend or anybody who's working in the organization, obviously. So what happens there? You will be again disturbed. So that is what I told you. The employee is either under rewarded or over rewarded or equitably rewarded. When inequity is perceived, employees attempt to reduce it by reducing input or sometimes increasing the increasing the output. Now, in this case also, we have to motivate all our employees because we have to treat everybody equal, correct? Because all are your employees. So we will try to understand motivating with equity theory, some useful general recommendations. So how manager should work in this particular situation and how we can motivate all the employees equally. So managers should be aware that equity is based on the perception, which may not be correct. See, when we speak about perception, students, when two students are comparing their marks, it is their perception that they have written well or someone is written well, or it is their perception that because they have written well, they want to get more marks. Because everybody thinks that they are the best, right? So, manager should be aware that equity is based on the perception, which may not be correct. So, it is possible for the manager to create equity or inequity. So, some managers have favorite subordinates who get special treatment. Always it happens, no, students. So, some managers' favorite subordinates will be there and they'll be always favored everywhere. So others don't. So don't play favorites while treating employees equally, but in a unique way. Then always understand, if you become the team leader, reward to all the employees should be equitable. So when we say reward should be equitable, when employees perceive that they're not treated fairly, what happens? Fairly, moral, and even the performance problems occur, then employees producing at the same level should be given equal reward, right? So those producing less should always get less, and those who are performing fine in the organization, they should always be rewarded with the greater benefit. Then high performance should always be rewarded. But employees must understand the inputs needed to attain certain outputs. When incentive pay is used, there should be clear standards specifying the exact requirement to achieve the incentive. A manager should be able to objectively tell others why one person got a higher merit rise than another did. That is very important. And students nowadays, transparency plays a very important role. If you are not transparent in the system, then people stop believing you. Okay, so this is how we can motivate all the employees. That is called as equity with, motivating with equity theory. Okay. Then the second theory is called as expectancy theory. So what we are understanding now, we are understanding process motivation theories. In process motivation theories, we discussed about equity theory, and now we are discussing about the expectancy theory. See, expectancy theory is based on Victor Vroom's formula motivation. I'm repeating once again. It is based on Victor Vroom's formula motivation, which he tells expectancy multiplied by instrumentality multiplied by valence. Now, let me explain what is this formula is all about. Expectancy theory proposes that people are motivated when they believe they can accomplish the task. They will get the reward, and the rewards for doing so are worth the effort. And this theory is based on the following assumptions. Both internal, when I say internal, those are needs, and external, those are environment factors, affect the behavior. So behavior is the individual's decision. So people have different needs, desires, and goals. And even people make behavior decisions based on their perception of the outcome. So what is this expectancy theory continues? It is all about, it continues to be popular in the motivation literature today. So in this expectancy theory, we majorly study about the three variables. All three variable conditions must be met in Vroom's formula for motivation to take place. See, when we speak about Vroom's formula, we should remember the three variables. Those are expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. So we'll try to understand each one of them here. Okay. What is expectancy? I expect something from the students, or even the students will be having an expectation about the teacher. So how can you define this expectancy? Expectancy refers to the person's perception of his or her ability to accomplish an objective. So generally, students, please understand, the higher one's expectancy, the better the chance for motivation. So when employees do not believe that they can accomplish objectives, they will not be motivated to try at all. Okay. Then instrumentality means what? It refers to belief that the performance will result in getting the reward. I'm repeating once again. It refers to the belief of whom? Belief of all the employees that the performance will result in getting the reward. So generally, the higher one's instrumentality, the greater the chance for motivation. If employees are certain to get the reward, they probably will be motivated, right? When not sure, employees may not be motivated. Okay. Then we have the third one that is called as valence refers. Valence refers to the value of a person places on the outcome or the reward. So generally, students, the higher the value means what? The more importance you give of the outcome or the reward, the better the chance of motivation. So if I tell that if XYZ wants a promotion, he or she will probably be motivated. Or if I tell someone that if you perform this particular task within this particular year, then there'll be a chance of everybody to be motivated or to be elevated to the next level. So however, please understand, if a promotion is not of importance to someone, it will not motivate them. Okay. Now, you as a leader, how to motivating with expectancy theory? Whom to motivate? All your followers or your employees. See, one study found that expectancy theory can accurately predict a person's work, effort, and then the satisfaction level and even the performance. But only if the correct values are plugged into the formula. So what is this? A meta-analysis, a study using the data of 77 other prior studies had a inconsistent findings with some positive correlations. So therefore, this theory, which one? Motivating with expectancy theory or expectancy theory, will work in certain contexts but not in others. So expectancy theory also works best with employees who have an internal locus of control. Please understand, expectancy theory also works best with employees who have an internal locus of control, because if they believe they control their destiny, their efforts will result in success. Now we'll try to understand, students, few motivational factors or motivating with expectancy theory, how the manager can motivate all his people. How? The first point, clearly he has to define the objectives and the performance necessary to achieve them. And the second important point here is the leader should directly tie the performance of an employee to the output, that is a reward. So today, in majority of the companies, so there will be a suitable reward given to the team which is doing extremely good, either on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, or they'll be reviewing the performance of each and every employee who is working in a team, and a suitable reward will be given, or a suitable designation will be given, or a pay hike will be given. Okay. Then the third one is, be sure rewards are of value to the employee, which means managers should get to know employees as individuals. So develop good human relations as a people developer. Then make sure that your employees believe you first. Make sure that your employees believe you will do what you say you will do. For example, students, employees must believe you will give them a merit rise if they do work hard. Correct? So that employees will believe in you, follow through, and show them that you do what you say you will do. And the last one is, you should use the Pygmalion effect to increase the expectations. The last but not the least. So your high expectations can result in follower self-fulfilling prophecy. And the last one is called goal setting theory. So the research conducted by E.A. Locke and others has revealed that setting objectives has a positive effect on motivation and even the performance. So high achievement motivated individuals consistently engage in goal setting. So please understand, students, this goal setting theory proposes that specific difficult goals motivate people. So our behavior has a purpose, which is usually to fulfill a need. So always, students, goals gives us a sense of purpose as to why we are working to accomplish a given task. Correct? So what are the writing objectives and the criteria for objectives? We'll see now in the next slide. So writing objectives. So what we are trying to understand here is goal setting theory. So the parts of the writing objective model are, 2 plus action verb plus singular specific and measurable result to be achieved plus targeted date. Now, what are these? Let me explain you now. See the diagram over there? So when I told one, that is 2 plus action verb plus the third one is called singular, specific and measurable result plus target data. So this was a classic example. So what are the criteria for the objectives? We will first understand, then I'll come to the 4 parts of the model with examples, okay? So when we speak about the company over there, the Domino's, so 2, the action verb is deliver, correct? So the action is what? What action you are doing, that is delivering. Then the third column over there, singular, specific and measurable result, that is pizza within 30 minutes. The target date is starting December 2007. So these are some of the targets over there. Then Toyota, 2, action verb is sell. Singular, specific, 10.4 million vehicles worldwide by the year end 2009. So what we are understanding here, goal setting theory, so writing objectives. Then 2, Nissan. Okay, see the third row over there. See my cursor. Okay, action verb here is launching. What? Electric vehicles in the United States as well as Japan. By when? The target is 2010. Then BMW, 2, action verb is increase. So this is an action verb here. Action verb means what? Anything which is an action which supports the noun. Then singular, specific and measurable result, sales, to increase the sales worldwide more than 40% by 2020. Okay, so what we're understanding here, we're understanding the writing objectives. So what are the criteria for the objectives of the singular result? That means to avoid confusion, each objective should contain only one end result, which means when multiple objectives are listed together, one may be met but other may not. Then the second criteria for objectives is something specific. See, the objective should state the exact level of performance expected. You should be very, very specific. So these are what we are understanding here, the criteria for objectives. And the third one is measurable. That is the saying what gets measured. That means measurable means what? If people are to achieve objectives, they must be even able to observe and measure their progress regularly, to monitor progress and to determine if the objectives has to be met. Then last is target date. See, always I tell the students, right, you should be always smart managers. So when I say smart managers, what do you mean by smart? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound. So for each and every goal in your life, you should be having a time bound for that. Okay, and target date means what? A specific date that has to be set for accomplishing the objective. So why the target date is so important, students? Because when people have a deadline, they usually try harder to get the task done on time. So if people are simply told to do it when they can, they don't tend to get around to do it until they have to. You have seen a classic example with you only. Till the examination timetable is not yet announced, you will not study. So the moment examination timetable is announced, then you set for the studies. The same way, target date means what? A specific date that is should be set for accomplishing. So if I simply tell you to study, what happens with you? You always believe that tomorrow we will sit for studies, tomorrow. But if a perfect timetable comes, then that seriousness will come to you. The target date is there for you. You have to finish studying all the papers within that particular date. So if people are simply told to do when they can, they don't tend to get around to do it until they have to do it. So it is also more effective to set a specific date rather than a set time, such as in 2 weeks, because you can forget when the time began and should end. Okay. So the target date is indefinite until it is changed. We'll last understand this reinforcement theory and I stop here. See, reinforcement theory, which is a B.F. Skinner, reinforcement motivation theorist, contends that to motivate employees, it is not necessary to identify and understand the needs, which we discussed in content motivation theories, nor to understand how employees choose behaviors to fulfill them. That is, we discussed in process motivation theories. So what this reinforcement theory proposes that through the consequences for behavior, people will be motivated to behave in a predetermined ways. So reinforcement theory uses behavior modification and operant conditioning types and schedules of reinforcement. So let me explain what is this reinforcement theory to all of you. See, Skinner states that behavior is learned through experiences of what? Of positive and negative consequences. I'm repeating once again. The reinforcement theory states that behavior is learned through experiences of positive and negative consequences. Whereas the other motivation theories do not fundamentally change the motivational structure as reinforcement theory does. So recent meta-analysis of the empirical research over the past 20 years found that reinforcement theory increased the performance by 17%. Right. So thus reinforcement theory can be a consistent predictor of job behavior. So what is this reinforcement theory? We'll try to understand with the components of this reinforcement theory. See, we have a stimulus which tells about the legal speed limit. Then the responding behavior is speed over there. Then the consequences of the behavior, that is a reinforcement, that is police officer will give a speeder or a negative consequence, ticket or fine, to discourage repeat of performance. So what are the components of reinforcement theory? Stimulus means what? There'll be a legal speed limit. If you go above 50 kilometer, so you will be penalized. Then your responding behavioral, what you will do? Either you will lessen the speed or you will increase the speed, because people love speed, right? Then what will be the consequence of that behavior? That is a reinforcement. So if you are greater than 50, if your speed level is greater than 50, then what happens? Police will catch you and the police officer will give a speeder a negative consequence, that is a ticket or a fine. Why? Because next time you should not repeat the same consequence. So majorly to discourage the repeat performance. Right? Students, I will stop the session here because already it's 3:15. In tomorrow's class, we'll try to understand the types of reinforcement. Okay? So I hope all of you have understood whatever concepts we have discussed today. So thank you so much for your patience listening. Tomorrow we will try to start from types of reinforcement.